Welcome, everybody, to episode 263 of WordPress Weekly for Wednesday, February 15th, 2017. I'm your host, Jeff Chandler, joined by Marcus Couch.
Yes, sir.
And I had a great episode last week with, I believe it was Morten Rand Hendrickson.
I got a lot of good comments about that.
Fascinating episode dealing with data-driven decisions with WordPress, telemetry, and boy, we could have dived in a lot deeper than we did, talking about user experience, particularly the new user experience with WordPress. But that's something we'll dive into at a later time on a different show. But today we're gonna take a step back from having guests and sort of get people caught up on the headlines. There are things afoot, as there always are in the WordPress ecosystem. So. In a previous episode, probably the episode before that, we mentioned that there was a pretty critical security vulnerability dealing with the WordPress REST API that led to privilege escalation so that WordPress pages could be defaced pretty easily through the WordPress REST API on WordPress 4.7 and 4.7.1. As it turns out, an update over the weekend, there are a lot of campaigns now, defacement campaigns from hacking groups where they're doing these automatic scans on websites and automatically defacing pages. I know Security's tracking them. WordFence is tracking them. Looks like the total somewhere around 1.8 to possibly 2 million pages that Google has indexed that have been defaced. And this has led to a lot of questions as to, well, why is the REST API enabled by default? And it turns out that plugin and admin functionality is going to be added to take extensive or exclusive use of the REST API in the future. And if we were to turn some of the things off related to the REST API, it would break certain features in WordPress. So that's why it can't simply be turned off by default. I know that Sergey Burukov, who is a core committer, says that turning off the REST API is like turning off admin ajax.php. Both will break your site. So there's also the question as to, well, why can't the content endpoints be protected by default while allowing the REST API to be on by default only for admin purposes? And I don't know. It looks like it's something that's not really an option. There are a couple plugins out there like Disable JSON API, which will disable the REST API, so you don't have to worry about this issue or any other issues. And then there's also the issue of disclosure. Well, why did Security a week after so this vulnerability came out, why did they even bother publishing the details of the vulnerability, which kind of upset some people. But so there's that issue as well. And then when the security team came out and specifically said that they fixed this critical update secretly, the news was added to a post that had already been published. So it's possible that many people who may have read the initial release posts that had details of the security vulnerability had no idea of the critical vulnerability that was fixed, which was added as an addendum to the original post. So there's that issue as well. I guess there's this argument that it should have been its own separate post, which I agree with, based on its severity. So there are many lessons that have been learned throughout this ordeal. And there's also this question of, well, why are there so many websites out there that are running 4.7, 4.71? Why have they not auto-updated? Auto-update is a thing. How can so many sites be vulnerable to this if auto-update is a thing? And, there's a number of situations where websites are not auto-updating. Either they're disabled. I know that at one point, if you installed WordPress through cPanel would disable the core automatic update system in place of its own. That has caused issues before. I don't know if it's still doing that. I'll have to look into it. Then there are the people who manage their sites and the updates on their own, and they don't want WordPress interfering with that. So there's, or maybe like in the enterprise, or there's like a change log that has to be done, or everything has to be tested thoroughly before things can be updated, and the things of that nature. So all that said, lessons have been learned. I think this will, help out the process in the future in terms of disclosing and security vulnerabilities. But the moral of the story is, if you're not running 4.7.2 yet, for goodness sakes, upgrade to 4.7.2 so you don't have to worry about this REST API issue. And related.
Well, I want to get back to. Hold on, I want to talk about this for a sec.
Okay.
We can't let flying cars go by us. And we always thought flying cars meant that they were flying the exact, the nice way, not flying at us.
Right.
If this happened to anybody else or any other software company or any other web company, they'd be sunk. 2 million pages defaced.
Yeah.
What's the labor that it's going to take to fix all that?
Or the cost to these people.
Who's resigning from the team that put this in place? Heads need to roll because of this. This isn't just something to sweep under the rug. This is something that potential clients of developers and engineers and programmers and people that try and convince their clients to go into WordPress, these are the things that the clients look up, and security issues that happen because of it. And somebody needs to start taking this seriously. Fine, you're going to come out with 3 releases a year, or you're not going to come out with certain amounts of releases a year. Fix the stuff that's broken. Why introduce this REST API thing if they know that a majority of the WordPress community population isn't going to use it because there's nothing documented about it, or hardly anything documented about it? Oh, learn JavaScript deeply. That's the only instruction that we get. It's a joke. Next story.
Oh, woo! Marcus is on another level too.
Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, I don't know.
I'm sorry, but I'm talking from the person that does business with WordPress.
Well, it
makes me sick. It really does.
It's open source software. It's written by volunteers. It doesn't mean people should get a free pass, but at the same time, I don't. How do you resign from something that's not resignable? I just think.
Okay, well, maybe that's a little extreme, but at least take some accountability. Get up, do a little press conference video. It's just I scratch my head over it, and I can't understand all the exuberance that the community has for this particular product and all that we put into it, and the fact that business is asked to put in 5% of their resources back into it. And this happens.
So we had a comment on the article that was sort of related to what you're speaking of by Mark K. And he believes that the bug causing this issue is a basic input sanitization bug. He says he could dig into who submitted the code and point the finger at him or her. But the truth is that the people that were supposed to review the code and do quality assurance are actually more to blame than the poor person who actually wrote it. So there's that issue of okay, so we write code, but then the people above that who's supposed to review it or do quality assurance, maybe that's where it fell through the cracks. So I don't know. It's a complicated issue, and maybe I should try and get Aaron Campbell, the head of the WordPress security team, on the show, and it'd be great to kind of get his take on this whole situation.
I'd love to. That'd be a great conversation. I'm sure I'd have plenty of questions to ask him.
So related to the security issues, a number of people who hook up their sites to Google Webmaster Tools received an email from Google that their site was running an outdated version of WordPress. And this actually happened to a number of people who had already updated their sites to WordPress 4.7.2. So in the notice, it would say something like, recommended WordPress update available for, blah, 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 your domain. It says Google has detected that your site is currently running WordPress 4.7.0 or 4.7.1, an older version of WordPress. And then with a little notice that says outdated or unpatched software can be vulnerable to hacking attempts. And then it gives you a list of example one or more URLs where the software was detected. And then it gives you, it suggests that you should update your software. So for those who don't know, WordPress by default uses a meta generator to print out the version number of WordPress. And this is the string that sort of is used by web crawlers to detect how many websites out there on the web are using WordPress. So what happens is Google doesn't monitor pages in real time. So if a site owner would update their site to 4.7.2, but the page, there one or more pages of that site are indexed by Google, and the meta generator is cached at 4.7.1, Google will send you the alert because it still thinks that your site is still out of date. So Julian Rincon, Webmaster Outreach at Google, responded to a forum thread that was brought up about this on the Google Product Tools website, and he confirmed that it was a problem on their end. He apologized for causing confusion in the messages, and that they would be working on improving the wording of the messages and using more data to reduce the number of notifications to owners who have already updated their sites. So there you have that. And it actually caused quite a bit of concern because people thought maybe the updates didn't go through on their websites correctly, so maybe they were still out of date, or some people thought the notification was a phishing attempt because WordPress was spelled with a lowercase p, and they knew well enough that it's spelled with a capital P. So I actually don't fault them for that. That's actually very keen and awareness on their part. And, it's nice to see them be concerned over a notification like that because of that misspelling. So kudos to them. But Google is going to be improving the notifications, and there you have it. So if you have updated to WordPress 4.72 and you get a notification from Google Webmaster Tools that your site's running out of date, you can probably safely disregard the notice. Don't worry about it.
Just like everything else that Google sends you.
Sort of. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Robotic Marcus. Yes, the robot has come back. So I'll let you disconnect and come back and talk about an event that's coming up on March 26th, or not March 26th, March 24th through the 26th this month, and that is WordCamp Miami. And this year's WordCamp Miami is pretty cool. They're sporting an 80s theme this year. Now, this is the 9th year that the event has been running, and I believe it is the longest running consecutive WordCamp that exists, which is pretty cool. So there's about 12 organizers on the team, and they're expecting about 800 attendees. They're going to host 60-plus local and global speakers, including new speakers from India, Australia, Poland, Canada, and other international locations. And they're also bringing back the 2-day kids camp and kids panel. So that's cool. I did one of the WordCamp Miami's I attended a few years ago, had a kids camp, and I was very impressed, by how much these kids learn and how much they pick up with WordPress. So that's pretty cool. And they're also going to have, I think it's the only WordCamp so far that has an entire track dedicated to JavaScript. So if you want to learn JavaScript deeply or kind of get involved with it or be introduced to it, WordCamp Miami definitely fits the bill. And one of the other awesome things about WordCamp Miami is they're going to be bringing in, there's going to have 2 sessions from members of the Drupal and Joomla communities. So Mike Herschel, who's a front-end web developer at Lullabot, is going to present on WordPress and Drupal, community and contribution differences and lessons. And then Alexander Kuzek, CEO of Perfect Dashboard, and a Joomla extension directory team member will be speaking about how Joomla handles plugin contributions. Those 2 talks I would be incredibly interested in sitting in on, just to get a different perspective from someone who's deep into those communities to find out what they're doing in these situations. So if you're interested in going to WordCamp Miami, and it's guaranteed pretty much to be pretty warm there, even in March, it's March 24th through the 26th. I am not sure if tickets are still available. Usually WordCamp Miami sells out pretty quick. So as we do this, I'll look for buy tickets, click here to purchase tickets, and it looks like tickets are still available. And even actually, there are tickets for specific parts of the event. So there's tickets for the Buddy Camper Rest API workshop. There's 3 different workshops that'll be happening on a Friday, so you can pick and choose which workshops you want to purchase tickets to attend, and all kinds of other neat goodies.
Is there a stream option for these?
I have not seen any news about a live stream yet.
That's a bummer.
So we'll see.
Huh.
But we know people will be there with video camcorders, and sessions will end up at WordPress.tv one way or another.
Yes.
That's generally how things work. So congrats to David Bissett and the rest of the organizing team out there for, 9 years consecutively running what has become known in the WordPress community as one of the top-notch premier events when it comes to WordCamps. WordCamp Miami is organized and run very well.
Yeah, I wish they had that out on the West Coast. That'd be nice, but I usually try and keep my WordCamps in driving range, and that's a little too far.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't be farther.
Yeah, I don't know if it could be farther away from you thinking about it. So OS Training has partnered with GoDaddy to launch a free WordPress beginner course on YouTube. So if you visit YouTube, the OS Training channel, there are 40 videos dealing with the WordPress beginner course. These are sponsored by GoDaddy, and OS Training has created a lot of different educational videos for Drupal, Magento, Joomla, and other open source projects, including plugins. And apparently this particular course, which deals with WordPress 4.7, was inspired by their success in launching a free Drupal 8 course in 2016. So OS Training did this Kickstarter campaign for $10,000. They actually raised $12,000 to fund a beginner's course for Drupal, and the Drupal 8 beginners class went viral, and it obtained over 1 million views in a year. So this was actually very surprising, and the CEO of OS Training, Steve Burge, says that it led us to rethink our business approach, and rather than putting everything behind a paywall, they realized the power of giving away their best beginning material so long as they had a sponsor for it. So they worked with GoDaddy. They had a sponsor. They put these videos together, and the videos are very well done. They're narrated and by Topher DeRoja, who we've had on the show before.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also done, and Steve Burge. And there's a lot of great videos on there. There's it talks about getting involved with plugins like Ninja Forms, Jetpack, and some of the other stuff like gets into security a little bit, spam, staging, performance, pretty much everything you need to know to get you started in WordPress, all in 40 videos available for free, high def on youtube.com. So congrats to Steve, and thank you very much to GoDaddy for helping to sponsor that and adding those awesome educational components to the WordPress community.
Yes, thank you. It's always nice to see people that you like getting involved, and I like all of them. I like Topher, I like Steve, I like GoDaddy. It's nice to see them all collaborate and create something really nice for the community.
So, Marcus, you're known as the plugin guru, and we always do your plugin picks of the week, which I'll say again is worth the price of listening to the show to some of our listeners out there. However, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Do you know why plugins sometimes disappear from the plugin directory?
Well, either they change and violate the terms, and then they have to be taken out. Sometimes they just, I don't know if it's a lose interest type of thing, but I know that there's still plugins that are in the repository that haven't been updated in 4+ years. So it can't be for that. What have you got on the subject?
Well, here's what usually happens. There's a semi-popular or popular plugin. Maybe it's installed on 20,000 sites. Maybe it's active on 100,000, but it will temporarily disappear. And maybe that user or keen user just happened at the right time, needed to install it on a new site or had to reinstall it, and gets the notice on WordPress.org that says, "We're sorry, this plugin cannot be found. Maybe you want to look at these instead," which is kind of their custom 404 page. And it turns out that plugins disappear from the directory on a regular basis, but it's for a number of different reasons. The most common, the most well-known, but not the most common, is our security issues. And plugins, I talked to Mika Epstein, who we've had on the show before, who gave us really an in-depth background on how the plugin directory works in the reviews. And she says that plugins are removed and by default hidden mostly because the plugin directory is on bbPress 1.0 and there's no granular control with post statuses when compared to WordPress itself. So there's a technological aspect to why this happens. Now I found out that the plugin review team has 3 different options to choose from when altering a plugin's visibility. So there's active, closed, and disabled. And disabled is rarely used, but what this does is it hides the plugin from view, but updates are still able to be pushed out to users. Now, when a plugin disappears, people, all you get is that 404 page. Nobody really knows why a plugin disappears. There's no detailed information. Now, the lack of information, Epstein says, is partly technical, as bbPress 1.0 is limited, but partly because the team can't all agree on the right way to disclose, when to disclose, and when not to disclose information related to a plugin. So she says, the last thing they want is are people being hacked, but it prevents them with few options, and they all have flaws. And like, for instance, using WooCommerce and Jetpack as an example, if she closed Jetpack today and told people WordPress decided not to support it anymore, but then closed WooCommerce and then says, "I can't tell you why," she says that intelligent people would probably know there's a security vulnerability in WooCommerce. That would be sort of the natural assumption. So, it's a conundrum without an easy solution. However, the good news is that the WordPress plugin directory is in beta, the new one. It's running on WordPress. So when it actually goes public, the plugin review team and the plugin directory will no longer be on bbPress 1.0. It will actually be running on WordPress, which opens up a host of opportunities and benefits for the team. They'll be able to utilize custom post statuses, maybe create custom messages, and do things of that nature. So there you have it. That's why sometimes plugins disappear from the plugin directory. And we've had a very healthy conversation on the tavern about what this means and the messaging and informing users. And it brings up an interesting question as to, well, if a plugin author chooses to delist their plugin and it's active on thousands of sites, how do we best inform users that that's occurred, rather than them going to the page at some point in the future because they need the plugin again and realize it's not there? Do we send a message through the dashboard? Do we send it to them in the admin page? Which, depending on the plugins that they're using, plugin developers are already sort of abusing their privilege through admin messages, and maybe the message would get hidden from view, or they wouldn't pay attention to it. And then there comes the question as to, well, when should users be notified? Every time it disappears, every time it's not available? Personally, I don't think so. I think if a plugin is delisted and that's that, I think a message should go out for that particular plugin. I think a new version of that plugin should go out in the change log or with an admin notice that says this plugin is no longer available and will no longer be supported or updated via the WordPress.org plugin directory. But a lot of that falls on the plugin author itself, not on the plugin review team. So I'm not sure how this is all going to shake out, but definitely a situation that I should look into, that maybe we should see if we can't come up with more solutions.
Right. Yeah, there's no good way. I mean, what do? Put a temporary notice in there or redirect? It's hard to say, and there'd be too many in the repo to be able to do that. You're talking about 50,000 plugins, having to manage them on almost a real time basis in terms of their status. So that's tough.
So there's a plugin that was suggested to us in the comments of the article, and it's called No Longer in Directory. So this is created by Whiteford Design, which I believe is a WordPress security firm. And what it does is it checks for installed plugins that are no longer in the WordPress plugin directory. So it says the plugin will separately list any plugins that have not been updated in the WordPress plugin directory in over 2 years, separate from plugins that are just simply no longer available on the directory. So I guess what this thing does is it does checks on the plugin directory every now and then or at a determined time. And if it can't find the page or it gets a 404 error, I guess it notifies you, lets you know that, hey, the plugin's not there. You might want to contact the author or figure out what's going on. So I'm going to actually review this, dive deeper into it, probably write an article about it on the Tavern, and I'll have more to say about it next week. But that's a potential stopgap solution. But for everything else, I don't know. It's an interesting situation.
Yeah.
Of how best to try and notify users, hey, this plugin is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. That one that I don't think will ever go away, really.
So we'll see what happens there. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up for some of the headlines during the week. And hey, while we're talking about plugins, I know 3 that Marcus has picked for us today.
Yep, I do have that, but I do also want to point out a news story that I actually forgot to paste into the show notes.
Okay.
Somebody took their Xbox and rigged it to be a WordPress server.
This is news to me.
Yeah, I'm going to find out a little bit more about it, and maybe we can get the kid that made it on. He's in Europe somewhere. I think he's in Denmark or something like that. But it really made me curious because I know that those things are wicked fast as far as the processing power of them. So I'm just curious as to see what kind of speed you could get out of that and the throughput. But yeah, so let's dig in right now and go with our plugin picks of the week. The first one here is something that I'm getting more cognizant of as time goes on. I've been taking a more of a design for mobile first approach rather than the other way around. And this plugin is called Mobile Featured Image. And what it does is it lets you upload a second featured image in the meta box right below the first featured image. And this one gets called up in mobile. So it takes away your regular featured image and puts this in its place for mobile. So you can literally have an A and B image, or you can maybe make it smaller or do something else, but that's exactly what it does. It's called Mobile Featured Image. The next one is called Facebook Messenger Bot for WooCommerce. I am in this Facebook bots group, and I'm seeing unbelievable progress in what people are doing with Facebook Messenger and the different bots. I mean, people are making things where you can message a business page and ask about, insurance quotes and tell it what you drive and all that. It starts to give you a quote just through Facebook Messenger. So this Facebook Messenger bot acts in WooCommerce. You can actually send your receipt to Facebook, go through the entire sales process, and it also has a Gravity Forms compatible thank you page and sends through Facebook Messenger as well. So check this out. This is the future. It's FB Messenger Bot for WooCommerce. And finally, this is an interesting plugin. It's called Restrict New Users by Domain. And by that, we're talking about their email address. So perhaps if you run a business and you say, you're a B2B and you only want to deal with other people that are businesses, maybe you want to restrict it that says, nope, no Gmails, no free email addresses, put your work email in here. And that's a very cool thing. You can either blacklist or whitelist. So maybe you're just having one client that has a domain and you only want the people that work there to be able to sign up as a new user. And this would whitelist only one individual domain. So it's pretty cool. You could do that with your customers as well if they log into your portal, so that only your customer domains have access to be able to create an account. Very cool plugin. It's called Restrict New Users by Domain. Very unique styling in this plugin. And those are my plugin picks of the week.
All right. So that's going to do it for this episode of WordPress Weekly.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, short and sweet. I believe, I don't think it was, it might have been last weekend. Time flies by. But LoopConf recently took place in Salt Lake City, Utah, and there are a couple of talks on there that were fascinating that I saw. I had a lot of reviews from the public on Twitter. I believe they are posting many, if not all, of the sessions online that people could view for free on YouTube. So I'll get confirmation of this. I'll probably confirm it, write it up on the site. But I heard there's many great sessions at LoopConf, so look forward to that. You can find show notes for this episode and all other episodes on WordPress Weekly, off WordPress Weekly on wptavern.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jeffro, JEFFR0. Marcus?
You can find me on Twitter at Marcus Couch and visit my website, marcuscouch.com.
All right. So until next week, everybody enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you again next Wednesday afternoon. Take care.